I reviewed Ys 10 Nordics on Nintendo Switch back in 2024. I gave it an 8.5 at the time, and I stand by that score. It was a great game that combined the fun, light-hearted adventure of Ys 8 with the improvements to traversal and exploration found in Ys 9, along with plenty of its own ideas. Now, Ys 10 makes its way to Switch 2 as Ys 10 Proud Nordics. This release combines a touched-up version of the original game with some brand new content that is available here for the first time. I won't fully re-review the entire game, and if you want my thoughts on the core experience, please check out my original review. Rather, I'll be looking at this release from the perspective of my own primary question when I first saw it revealed. Is it worth picking up if I already have the Switch version? One key detail to get out of the way right at the start is that Proud Nordics does not have cross-progression with the original release, so even if you're partway through the Switch version, you'll have to start over on Switch 2. It's a little disappointing, but I assume this is due to the way the new content is implemented. The new side story is built directly into the main game and is played alongside the main story. It feels very natural within the context of the rest of the game, but it means you can't go directly to the new stuff even if you've already played the game before. I won't go into the actual plot of the new content, but it's fairly substantial with new areas and characters. Outside of that new content, the big thing you'll notice immediately if you're coming from the Switch version is the substantial performance boost on Switch 2. The Switch was a lead platform for the original release, so it was always technically solid, but the Switch 2 offers substantial improvements. You get modes for both 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second, as compared to the original's 30 frames per second. On the original Switch, Ys 10's dynamic resolution generally landed around 720p. Out of curiosity, I decided to capture my comparison footage of the original Switch version on a Switch 2, just to see how different it would actually be from the full Switch 2 version. Backwards compatibility is able to brute force that 720p up to a full 1080p, which was a pleasant surprise. It's actually the same underlying resolution as the full Switch 2 version. The difference here is that the Switch 2 version benefits from proper anti-aliasing, improving the image quality significantly. If you're coming from having only played this version on an actual original Switch, then the difference will be even more stark than these comparisons. The updates aren't purely in image quality and frame rate, however. One of the first things I noticed was improvements to draw distances. The original Switch version suffers from some aggressive LODs and secondary detail and character culling. Elements of the environment constantly appear directly next to you as buildings pop between levels of detail. On Switch 2, the LOD issues are more or less entirely resolved. Pop-in is pushed out significantly. Detail like foliage is denser and draws out farther from the camera. In some instances, it actually appears in areas that it was completely absent from on Switch, such as on islands when sailing. Various elements of lighting have been improved as well. Shadows are significantly higher resolution, though the cascade is still very obvious. Ambient occlusion has been added to fill in pockets of shade in the environment, making them look significantly less flat. It also helps to give the characters proper grounding shadows in dimly lit interior areas. The stylized rim lighting used on characters now also applies to environments, which I felt was more cohesive overall. The Ys series has long been a lower budget title that hasn't pushed the boundaries of graphics by any means, but I think Ys 10 in particular really manages those limitations well, and this version presents those budget-conscious decisions in a positive light. As it has always been, Ys 10 remains an excellent game. This new version is undeniably the definitive way to play. While it ran well on the original Switch and actually benefits quite nicely from backwards compatibility on Switch 2, the technical improvements that come with a proper Switch 2 version are hard to ignore. The combat in particular really benefits from those higher frame rate options. The new content means there are fresh experiences here for returning players. It also includes all the costume DLC released for the original game. However, the lack of cross-progression does mean that you'll have no choice but to start over. On the other hand, if you've yet to play Ys 10, I can wholeheartedly recommend this version. While returning players do have to wrestle with whether the upgrade is worth it, new players should absolutely dive in without hesitation.
This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.